the Cursed Caves, how I arrived at that, the influences on it and stuff like that, I guess you'll see as we go through. So a bit about me. They already said I'm an illustration graduate. But I sort of took a games can be illustration approach to the course, so a lot of the stuff that I did, particularly towards the end, was submitted as games. And gaming is what I do, very passionate about it. I spend most of my time either playing, writing, or making games. Games of all types, video games, card games, board games, role-playing games. Not so much sport. It depends. A bit of martial arts, maybe. So, we'll start by kind of what inspired the Cursed Caves. You can all have a go at it later. It's also available for download on my blog if you want to have a go. Unfortunately, it's PC only at the moment because of the thing that I used to make it. I couldn't export it to Mac, but you can have a go over there while it's there. If you have a friend who has a PC, maybe. So this was I didn't attribute it to it at the time, but this is one of my current favourite books. It's Overqualified by Joey Komu, who writes the Assault the World webcomic, if anybody is into that. It's a book of story, it's a story told through covering letters, but in which he writes one to Nintendo, which, although it's supposed to be a bit disturbing and as a joke, I think it has a good point to it, is that where do we go for realism once graphics have improved in games? But I think really that games should have been looking for realism before, anyway. And he makes a point about what happens after Mario saves Princess Peach. And you think that particularly as soon as she gets kidnapped so often, there maybe would be some friction in their relationship, but the game never covers that. So the one time that Luigi makes an off-the-cuff comment in the pub and Mario breaks his nose and then regrets it immediately. But yeah, I think it makes a good point about games, and it's something that people don't necessarily think about, and I guess that's fair enough, but there's that opportunity to explore these things in games, and it's not often taken. So you should read this book, it's really good. So then there's the damsel in distress story, which is what the game covers really, although I hope it's an interesting twist on it. You see it all over the place, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but there are some examples. There's Mario. This is from the latest Mario game, I mean seriously. Princess Peach has been getting kidnapped for nearly 20 years. There was one game, I think, where it flips the tables, but it was really terrible, and she used her emotions to fight her enemies. It was quite offensive, really, I thought. But there we go. And there are the Zelda games. That's fantastic. That was a sticker, apparently, that came out when the first Zelda happened. I don't know where you get them, but I do have a good image I can find out there. I suppose that kind of sums it up. So anyway, I had a story in mind. I had some things that I wanted to explore, and then I thought, let's make a video game. I'd already made several board games and card games before, because that's something that you can knock up at home, but making a video game I always felt was a bit further on. It takes many more steps, there's too many things you need to know. I was scared of trying to learn to code, but I found Game Maker. I don't know if anybody's had a go with it. It's very good. If you think that you might like to play around and trying to make a video game, it's really easy to learn. And I think it's changed forms a couple of times since I had it, but I still think you can use a version of it for free. It works on a visual basis. This is kind of like explanatory diagram. Everything's stacked within each other, so you have objects inside backgrounds, on top of backgrounds inside rooms. It's good. It's easy to learn as well. This is it in action. I think the colours are hideous, but you can change them. I just forgot how. That's what it'll look like if you use it. So, if anyone else is interested in making games, there are a couple of other things that Twine I've heard a lot about, but I haven't used it myself because I haven't thought of anything that I would make in it. But it's a game. Do you remember Choose Your Own Adventure books or anything like that? Like branching storylines. It's a really easy way of making those. Online, it's free to use, and there's a lot of push behind it at the moment for the indie markets. I'm sorry, for independent games developers because it's so easy to make a game. You know, like you can think of a concept and knock it up straight away. But it's got the potential to be powerful. I think it runs on HTML. Also Inform, which is quite an easy method of writing interactive fiction, which is text-based adventures. I don't know if anybody used to play them on the old consoles where it would describe something. It would say, you are in a cave, you may go to the north is an exit. You could look north, pick up cup, yeah. That's what you can make with that. But again, it's quite customizable and it works. It's a programming language, but it works. It understands something a little more like plain English, which is quite easy to learn comparatively. I recommend them. So actually, when I had a tool and I had an idea, so this is coming to actually developing the first bits. So. I guess there was the story in line first. These are some. There are going to be some images from my sketchbook. So the next few pages, you won't be able to read them, but I thought they might make a nice, pretty background. So I had this idea about the damsel in distress story and wanting to twist it and make people think about it a little bit of a different way. Explore what's important about it rather than what every other game explores. I don't know whether that was successful, but I hope it was. So that's that. And then this was the final plot diagram of the actual game. I had a bit of an obsession with plot diagrams for a while, and I started mapping out choose-your-own-adventure books and stuff, but it's really hard to do when there are like 500 pages and you've got arrows all over the place, but I thought they looked really nice. So that's what this game is in reality. The bit in the middle, in the dashed line, I think is what you would normally have in a Rescue a Girl game, but the rest of it is what's interesting about it, in my opinion. So that's what you should experience. Some of the development of the gameplay. It's not really worth going through it now. Okay, so when you're developing the gameplay elements of a game, and I'm talking about not necessarily the graphics or the sound, but I'm talking about video games here, but it can apply to board games as well, like the way the game actually works. It's important to consider how they affect the feel of the game too, because I had a very specific feel in mind, is that I had to feel like an old game like Zelda, or like Mario to an extent. So I wasn't necessarily going for the best method of, well, any of these gameplay elements, but you want the one that feels the most right when you play it for the feel of the game, I guess. So the controls are deliberately a bit clunky. You can't move diagonally because that was the case in a lot of old games. The animations are a little bit shoddy, and there aren't very many of them. There's the repeated tile sets, which, you know, everything is made of the same stuff. There are like 2 different cabinets, like one chair that everybody in the village has, you know, and the same beds. Yeah. So, but it's all deliberate because it all helps evoke this memory of these games like Zelda, these damsel in distress games, which hopefully will put people in the mindset that you can then twist. But it's important to consider these things, and I don't know if sometimes people, I think maybe overlook them slightly when they play video games. And then sometimes I'm not even sure if the developers overlook them themselves. You know, if you're playing a game, the animations are just terrible. I don't know. It's something that I hope people will think about a little more. Okay. So again, the graphics and the sound all add up to the whole of the game. So the graphics are deliberately pixelated. I know that's a very common thing in indie games, and that's a bit of a joke. But like in this case, I think it helped. Or maybe I was just drawn to it because I think pixelated graphics are cool. I don't know, but it worked for what I wanted to say. So. Some of this I mentioned already. The sound I had the most trouble with because I've got no experience with sound control. I used, if anybody remembers Mario Paint on the SNES that came with a mouse, and you could make music on it. I used a kind of knockoff web version of that and then patched it through Audacity to play it. And then there's a great sound effect maker called SFXR, if you're looking to make sound effects for your game. It's free and he absolutely doesn't mind if you use it in a game that you want to sell. It's great for just generating quick sound effects, so those are good links for anybody who's interested. Some of the graphics, but the colours are really bad on here. So they don't look anything like that in the game. You should play the game itself and see them. But this is, this is basically everything that was in the game except for the backgrounds, sort of showing the limited tiles there. So, on from that, I guess what I was trying to explore with the Cursed Caves is that games have more of a power that I think should be used more often. And I sort of wanted to make a point about that, as I've said, twisting the story of the hero and the girl and what happens afterwards. What if the girl doesn't like the hero? What if he's a nutcase? Why does he carry a sword around all the time? Who does that? Who wears their armour in the village while talking to people and raids their personal chests that they have in their houses? It's all very unusual. But this is what I want people to think about when they play games next. So, this is what I wanted from it, to make a working video game, which I did, so that was a success. As to whether it's surprising or whether it makes people think about games, maybe only after I've told you that it's supposed to, I don't know. But I would like it if it made some people think. I guess if I had some more negative comments on it, it takes a little bit too long to get to the point, but I guess that was deliberate because I wanted to trick people into thinking it was a normal rescue game first. It takes a good sort of 5 or 10 minutes to get to what happens after you rescue the girl, which is the important part. But I recommend you get to that bit if anybody wants to. There are like 6 different endings, but one of them is the true one, which completes the story. I would say it's worth seeing those. That's it really. It's up to people to try it and tell me if they thought it was any good. I would like it if people did. So, and that kind of mirrors what I think games should be, what I want from a game when I play it. I want to be surprised. I think there's so much opportunity to be surprised by a game, and I so rarely am. I have a tendency to play, I'm talking mainly video games here, I have a tendency to play horror games just because they make you jump, which I think is about the most you can expect really at the moment. But there is stuff, there are some good indie games out there, and I'll go through some good examples later. But I want something engaging, I want to feel something new. So, I wrote a blog post last year about it. It's a bit strange sounding, but it kind of sums up what I think about games. So I want a game to be a personal experience. It has the power to be, but it rarely is. I don't want to just beat up monsters with a person that looks like myself. I want to confront the manager that I had when I was 18 who hated me and I never figured out why. And maybe I could get some resolution to that. I wanted to remind me of the mistakes that I made. I wanted to wake me up in the middle of the night and then it's not there when I turn over. I don't know, but something new, something different. So this is a good comment on games actually. I don't know if anybody reads Dinosaur Comics, the webcomic. You see, I've mentioned a couple of webcomics now I'd like to read. He's done a couple on the theme of games as they are played. And this makes an interesting point about Monopoly in that he reckons that the object of Monopoly is to fully explore the sensations of boredom, sorrow and rage. In this sense, everyone's a winner. To become clear, in the first 30 minutes that you've lost it, the game will grind on for hours. I hate Monopoly. But I think it's one of the worst games. It's the best selling board game. Do you know? Sorry, I find that bizarre. Okay. So, some examples of, not necessarily the best, but some that came to mind when I was writing this presentation of some games that I'd like to talk about briefly. So there's a role-playing game called Mythender, which is free to download, but you have to have all the dice and stuff yourself. Now the premise of Mythender is that you're a mighty, mighty warrior slaying ancient gods. It's set in a kind of heavy metal Norse god mythology. And you need something like 160 dice to play it, and that's a deliberate choice. So, the idea is that when you make your roll, I don't know how many people have played RPGs, but normally you roll a dice to see if something goes well or not, and you write things down. But in this one, you get to cast hundreds of dice at a time, and it just makes you feel it's an epic activity, and it mirrors the theme of the game, and I think that's a great example of how the mechanics of a game reflect the feel and the theme of it. So, there's a great game called Dysphoria by Anna Anthropy, which is an autobiographical game about undergoing hormone therapy. I recommend playing it. She uses some interesting mechanics. It's sort of a set of mini games, a little bit like WarioWare, if anybody's played that, in which it sort of explains different parts of the she's transgender, so it explains different parts of the therapy and some of the trials she had to overcome. But failure is worked into it as a mechanic, so the idea is that you get to slowly succeed more and more as things start going better for you. And I think the idea of failure being deliberate is quite an interesting one. I mean, personally, I'm not that fussed about winning or losing at games, I just enjoy playing them. And I think failure should be used more often. And on that, Fiasco is a huge amount of fun. It's a sort of storytelling, role-playing game. They say that it's inspired by Coen Brothers movies, and you are set up to fail in the beginning. So you're telling a story probably about quite a small-time caper gone horribly wrong, ending in death. You know that you're going to lose from the very beginning, so you have a great time doing it. You lose spectacularly. You want things to start small and end massive, but in a horrible way. So it's a lot of fun. You have to play with a group of people who are willing to get involved in the story. It plays 3 to 5 people. I very much recommend it. It's one of my favourite games at the moment. Werewolf, great party game. There are this is the version that I have, but there are other versions of Werewolf. And it also apparently there's a mafia-themed version of it, which may be based on, called Hitman. It's a game you can only play with sort of 6 or 7 people or more. I mean, I think this plays up to 68 people. So the idea is it's a village. Some of you are werewolves, some of you are villagers. There are less werewolves, but nobody knows who. And every night the werewolves eat somebody. Every day the villagers lynch somebody trying to kill the werewolves, and that's about it. And you get into horrible arguments. There's paranoia. There's dirty group scheming. It's fantastic. You get to experience a full range of terrible emotions. It's really fun, this game. I recommend having a go. It's easy for anybody to play as well. You don't have to roleplay or anything to do it. It's a lot of fun. And to talk about a video game, I very much enjoyed Heavy Rain, because I thought that it used normality really well, and it allowed you to engage very directly with the characters that were in it. This might not be very interesting for people who haven't played PS3 games, but kind of the early sections of the game, before it turns into this kind of murder mystery story, involve you playing as a guy getting up in the morning. You have to brush your teeth, have a shower, and welcome your wife and kids home. Maybe prepare dinner for them. You get to choose a few things. I thought it was really sweet, and it focuses on those really kind of small family moments before the story takes off. I mean, some horrible things happen. I think that it uses that opportunity really well to get you right into the character's life, so that then when he goes through these horrific situations later on, you feel them a lot more as he does. I think that was the last example. Yes, it was. So, any questions? Oh, do you know what? I'm going to put a link up. Right.
I should probably see how my mates do these.
Any other questions?
Yes. Coming from someone who hasn't actually played your game as yet, and obviously you coming from an illustrative background, how did you work out your core mechanics of your game? Obviously you talked about Zelda and obviously board games. Have you incorporated these into your core mechanics? What is the fundamental thing you do in your game?
So,
other than get the princess?
Well, initially you walk around and you stab monsters until you rescue the princess. I wanted to evoke games like Zelda, as you said. It's quite simple. You can move up, down, left or right, and you press space to attack, and that's it. once you rescue the princess, it's more, there's less combat and it's more about talking to people in the village, but it's still just up, down, left, right, and space. You wander around and talk to people, similar to all games like Final Fantasy, I suppose. Or Zelda, actually, I guess, because you do that in the villages.
Did you work this out? When you were developing your game, did you feel that initially you wanted to make it as a hack and slasher, such as Zelda, in that sort of way, and then you decided to go on a narrative base, or did you want to have that progression naturally from realising that warfare isn't something we can all do? We can actually talk through problems.
Well, it kind of came hand in hand, because when I had this idea that I wanted to explore the damsel in distress story anyway, but when I first downloaded Game Maker, I was playing around and I just wanted to see if I could make a situation where you could control a character on the screen in a similar way to Zelda. It just so happened that I could use then the two things to make the game. So it was called, they kind of evolved together.
Okay.
Yeah? Any more? No? Okay.
There's one there.
No, I think it's very next one.
Well, actually, I do have one thing. Have you ever played your game Fahrenheit?
Yes, I was by the same people who made it. Very good
game.
Oh yeah.
Is it fun to program games, or it's more fun to play games?
A bit of both. It depends what kind of mood I'm in, I suppose.
So you enjoy both?
It can be frustrating, problem solving, but I guess that's also the most rewarding part of it. Because I say when you go to make a game, you should either have an idea of what you want to do and aim for that, or just go to play around. It can be a bit frustrating if you're somewhere in between those two ideas.
But you can improvise in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff comes from like anything, trial and error. You make mistakes, and it might be something that was good actually. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
Okay, I was just going to say that often people sort of separate play and fun from education and learning.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure when all of us were young, remember those like really educational games we had in school and that sort of stuff. But I was wondering, because when it comes down to the option to make free choices and decisions, it'd be a really good sort of vessel for being able to teach children about philosophy and really complex, scientific concepts. But it never really seems to have been explored. Have you ever thought about sort of involving educational aspects within play, your games?
It's a tough one, I guess. As you said, people tend to separate it. But I guess there's no reason that you would. But you'd have to develop a way of making it good. So I suppose the thing is, you'd have to have an idea of making a game that's educational initially. It's a tough one because the games that I've played that have been educational have just been games where they've had education just plugged into them. You'd have to find a way of developing the two concepts hand in hand. I don't know, I guess it's yet to be seen. There might be some really good ones out there, I just haven't played. I don't know. It's a tough one. You know? Oh yeah?
Is there any other video game cliches you would love to explore? I mean, my favourite is like the guy next to you is wearing the exact same armour as you, but he gets killed in about 5 seconds, and you get killed in about half an hour.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I also started working on a game which has a very similar theme, which is a top-down vertical shooter in the style of kind of the old action hero 80s ones. I was going to make you really have to face the death of every single henchman that you killed. I got a bit bored of programming that one. It might happen in the future, but that's as I said, yeah, absolutely. I would keep doing that forever, exploring these old cliches, but I guess we've got to look for something else as well.
If you could collaborate with anyone on your next game, a fantasy game, who would you collaborate with?
I don't know, it's a tough one. I mean, I have started a few collaborations in the past, but I tend to, I mean, this is just me personally, I tend to get really involved in the projects that I'm on, and like really absorbed in them. I would have to, the problem I've had is that I've been collaborating with people from a distance and I find it really difficult to keep that up. But if I could do it in a situation where we're all working together in the same room, I would enjoy that maybe, and I would welcome any kind of area collaboration.
Really. So you're collaborating mostly online?
Yeah, attempting to. It didn't really go very far, to be honest.
It's tricky.
I mean, having a full-time job and stuff, it's hard to dedicate enough time to my own pursuits that I need to do collaborations as well. I need it really. Oh,
Yeah, sorry, just one last one. I
Yeah.
was just going to ask, what do you think of games like Second Life? Was you ever inspired to work with sort of massively multiplayer online concepts? Or do you not consider, Second Life to be a game and things like that? What do you think about it?
I'm not one of these people who likes to get drawn into the topic of what is and isn't a game. I think that that's up to the person who's playing. I'm sort of the opinion that if you feel like you're playing the game, but I don't really care either way. Like Second Life, I mean, it's massively popular. As for working on something that was massively multiplayer myself, it's way beyond my scope at the moment. But if I had a good idea, maybe at pretty small scale, to be honest, like using those programs that make it easy is the only thing I can do at the moment.
Just one last one from
Oh, yeah.
Tara.
No, sorry.
I see you've got the New Testament on your desktop.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. But I was wondering, did you look at it for research purposes? And because it's quite heavily text-based at times, and I was wondering, like in terms of its educational, it's kind of just like reams of Bible quotations. But I was wondering, have you looked at a lot of text-based games, but like purely text-based, like Facade, for instance?
I've not heard of Facade. I play all sorts. I do like a lot of games that are very heavily text-based. The New Testament, I just heard it was weird and wanted to have a go at it. It is very strange. If anybody fancies playing a really, really violent, biblical, educational game, I guess. It's strange. And
It
kind
includes
of
meditation.
yeah, it compares Christianity to Buddhism quite a lot as well. But it's quite blasphemous. And the gore is default at extreme. So it's an interesting idea. Anyway, it's really bad. Okay, is that it?
Yeah, I think I need to.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, just a few minutes before we get to James.